to record. Perfect. Hello, all. Welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh, and I have with me today a very special guest, Mallory Kuhn. How are you today, Mallory?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm excellent. It's been a nice day of just interviewing authors for the podcast. So
I
just
love
sitting
it.
here. I don't know if you guys can see, but my little buddy came down earlier.
Oh,
Ranger here, my friend's
oh,
dog. So Scott Oden was just on with me, so we talked about making Ranger my co-host and for future podcasts. So I was thinking we'd be disturbing him, but he's still on his nap. So
I was gonna say he's out cold.
yeah, he just likes to cuddles. So he's a good one.
I love it.
All right, so I sent you the questions, so we'll actually just
Yeah.
start. I like having people have them because I'm a teacher, so I feel like visual aids help. That
It's
helps my
so
students.
nice though, because I'm so type A. Like I
Yeah.
like to be prepared.
No, I totally understand. Like because I asked people because like I got Michael R. Fletcher coming right after you at 3:00 and we were talking and he goes, I don't want to know anything. I want to go cold. And I know he likes that kind of thing because his mind, works differently than mine. I have to have the questions ahead of time. So that's where I like to give people the option. I had a couple other people like Mark like to have them. So I just thought, you know what? A couple people asked, so might as well just ask everybody right off the bat. And I think it actually helps me too to send it to people ahead of time. That way I kind of work on the questions a little bit better and, kind of go from there. So we're going to start with that first one there. What has your writing journey been like? Where did you start exactly?
Yeah, so my writing journey has been long and
Amen to that.
full of trial and error.
I was like, I think I just turned 34. So I think I must have started writing my current setting and then changed it. But I think I was like 14. So I'm on like year 20. So I feel you.
Yeah, right. It's like all of it. It's a journey for everyone, I feel like.
Yeah.
I've
Good
been
word for it,
writing.
journey.
Yeah, right. I've been writing forever. I mean, that's like most writers say that, since I was a kid. But like I actually started like thinking of ideas, writing the story and finishing it and editing it. I started doing that at like about age 22, like right out of college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty much like I always say, I got a couple months into my first office job and went, oh, I can't do this forever. So decided to return to the old passion of writing that I'd kind of put aside while I was in college. But yeah, so I started writing seriously in 2014. I, queried a bunch of books. I queried 5 books before I got an agent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And now I'm like super glad that none of them went anywhere because I was learning how to write a novel. I didn't know how to do it. They're not very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I can return to them. I've actually pilfered a lot of them for parts since. So they're not really workable anymore. But the 5th book that I wrote is actually a young adult fantasy. And that was what I signed my agent with. And we took that on submission and it never sold. So Thieves is actually the 6th book that I have like made an attempt to get published. And I couldn't be more thrilled that none of the other ones worked out now that I have Thieves. You know what I mean?
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Brandon Sanderson wrote, I believe, 13. It was either 10 or 13 before he actually sold his first one. And to be fair, one of them that he really wanted to fix and he just couldn't figure out the time was actually A Way of Kings.
Oh, dang.
The other one was Warbreaker, which is one of my favorite books of all time, and Elantris. And he set them aside and then came back later. And, those have changed the entire fantasy genre. So,
oh, for sure.
I feel like you only doing 6 is actually, you're right on the right track.
Ahead of the curve.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and like, I totally get that though, because there are a few projects that I haven't even finished, but I've started drafting and gone, I am not mature enough as a writer to tackle this and to like execute this the way I want to execute it. So I've set them aside and hopefully I'll come back to them later. And,
It's so funny that you say that. It's so funny that you say it because I was just talking to Mark about this Saturday or Friday. We were supposed to do episode 3 because we got cut off the other day with the internet where I was at. And we thought, well, let's just get together. And then we actually started talking and forgot to record.
Oh no.
because we were just so in depth. And it was just funny that you say that, because I was talking to him about a superhero trilogy that I want to do, and in my head it sounds so good, and when I tried it, it didn't work. And I told him, I said, I'm just not a mature enough writer to write it. It's almost like you're 10 years old trying to bench press like 250 pounds. It just doesn't work because your
Right.
body's
That's
not
a good
mature enough.
metaphor though. Like you need a couple more reps
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
metaphorical writing gym
yeah.
before you can, maybe you
I
tackle that
feel like
project.
I need like 10,000 or 100,000
Right.
reps. But no,
Couple more
I get
years
that.
of reps.
Yeah, but I get that. And it just makes me feel better. And so that I probably should explain this, but people that I'm trying to advertise this podcast for are people like me, who I'm on draft 2 of my first novel. And I just want them to know that, people like yourself who've already written 6, and I know people that, have bought your book and really enjoyed it. So I just want them to know that we're all in the same boat here,
Yes.
just to keep going.
100%. Yeah, you always hear those stories of the person who like sells the first book they wrote and it's only on sub for like a week and like whatever.
Maybe 3 weeks, like Will White's first one.
Yeah, but it's like
And then
that's
2,500 copies in first month. Like
that is by far the least common
exactly.
way that this goes. Like I'm a part of a group that's I call it our support group.
Oh, nice.
It's like a bunch of other authors that are debuting this year.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Like I don't think there's a single person in that group. I could be wrong. I can't think of off the top of my head a single person in that group that like is that silver bullet to publication story. Like it's just not that common. So if you're out there working on your first or your second book, like you are on the right path. Like keep trucking. You got this. But be patient with yourself. Be nice to yourself.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think that's great advice. It's sorry, I think I don't know if it's my internet or this computer today. It's been a little laggy.
Oh no.
So I apologize if I interrupt you. It's because of my audio. Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because like Mark, for instance, and I were talking, and I'm so sorry, but Mark's book is gonna be way better than mine. I already know, but from like his explanation, and his blurb is amazing. He got Felix to do the cover art, and I told him, I was like, I'm trying. He's like, well, I'll help you. So he was helping me a little bit the other night, and then I'm actually gonna do some rewrites and things, and then redo the outline, and then send it to him. So he's been awesome. But I was just like, I just felt like after talking to him, I felt like I was on a mountain, and I was at the bottom. And he goes, it was just funny through our conversation, very similar to what you said, and he was like, don't worry. He's like, I'm on the next mountain, looking down at you, but then looking up at my mountain
at the next
someone
one.
else. Yeah. And we were just thinking of like that mountain range, and I just thought that was a really good way to put it. So
yeah, well, and I'll tell you, I don't know, obviously I am still at the bottom of one of the very early mountains, right? Like I'm
the foothills. The foothills.
Yes, I'm in the foothills. Yeah. But I don't know that there's ever going to be a point when I pick up books all the time that I read, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm terrible. Like this book is incredible. Like I will never write anything as good as this book. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's just super normal. Like they're just different authors have different strengths, but also like you don't have to necessarily be the best. It's not a competition.
Oh, yeah.
It's just as long as you are putting something out there that can find the readers that need it and is something you're proud of, then
I'm quoting you there. That's a good quote right there. I'm definitely quoting you there. That's a really good one.
Perfect.
Well, that's what Mark and I talked about too, is that they were talking about that on on one of the threads the other day I was looking at on Twitter, and someone's like, do you see other authors as competition? And I'm like, no. I'm like, I have so many authors that are my friends. I was like, I buy their books, I buy their audio, I'll buy their Kindle. I'm like, I buy their books for other people, for gifts and stuff. I'm like, I want them to be successful. I'm like, I don't want that, and it's funny that you said that, because we had a huge topic about that the other day on a Facebook group that I'm a part of, and it turned into like this huge thing, and some people were like, I see all of you as competition. I'm like, well, I'm not taking your book sales. So,
yeah, right. Well, it's just
That's why they're book
technically,
shelves, you know,
I
like
guess, like
shelves.
if you're on a shelf, is it technically competition? I guess. But like, I don't know. I see all my fellow writers as like my teammates in this very long journey.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if you try to do this very long journey by yourself, you're gonna be really lonely. It's
No,
gonna be
totally.
stressful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is like, no offense, but like, I don't know anybody who's gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna go read Mallory's, you know, Among Thieves. I loved it. I'm not gonna go buy another thief book.
Right.
They're gonna go and buy your book
That's it.
about
All
thieves.
done.
Like, yeah, I'm like, if it, and especially like fantasy, historical fiction, and sci-fi and urban fantasy, like I feel like those genres have the biggest following. And Scott just made a really good point. He's like fantasy people in particular, and I actually think sci-fi. I think any of those genres, historical fiction, I think now is new, where fans are talking a lot about, you know, the books and stuff. The brothers Gwyn, Edward, you know, and William are, you know, like that, where they love talking about historical fiction. And I'm like, I've been eating up historical fiction since they've been talking to me about it. And I just think that, yeah, like it's like Miss Pac-Man, you know, you get one and you just go to the other one. And like everybody knows, especially fantasy, like we're addicted, you know. And I don't
Oh
know
yeah.
anybody that's going to be like, I'm just going to buy Mallory's book and not buy somebody
Right.
else's. Like,
It's my only book for the year. That's it.
exactly, yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm like, you're going to go down and, you know, or go to Amazon or the bookstore or the library, and you're going to go on the Kindle and you're going to go find more thief books. Like, we
You're
all
going to
know
come
that.
home with 14 books and then you're going to
Exactly.
sit and look at them on your shelf and feel
Yeah.
guilty for not reading them for a
Yep.
year and a half.
Yep.
This is what we do.
Like, it's a sickness. We all know it. And my wife calls it my sickness. And it's funny because she's always like, this is the healthiest sickness anybody can have. And
I was going to say
uh,
there are worse sicknesses to have than books.
yeah, well, my buddy was making fun of me. He goes, "Oh, you're gonna go to the bookstore again?" I'm like, "Okay, you gonna go to the bar again?" And you know what I mean? And I'm like, he literally spends more on two beers at this one, you know, and it's a local place, it's whatever, but he spends more on two beers like every Friday to go out to eat than I do. Like I might buy like 2 or 3 books a month, you know, and I usually try and cap it at four, like a book a week or something. But you know, he'll go out and I'm like, that was just the one Friday every Friday. I go, then you go out on Saturday. If you go, I go, by the time you're done, I'm like, you just spent like 6 months of books, you know? And I'm like, I don't drink beer and I barely drink. And I'm like, I'm saving my health and working my mind out. So I'm like, let me buy
Yeah.
another fantasy or thief book. And, you know, and he's like,
Travel to
that's
a
a good
new
point.
world inside my brain for a
Exactly.
few
Yeah,
hours. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Oh, it's funny too that you said that, because like Fletcher was talking about that the other day with feeling it's their 37th episode of season 2 for you listeners out there. I plug a lot of their stuff because I love that podcast for Wizards, Warriors, and Words. And him and Ashton had both talked about like still like they have imposter syndrome. And you know, we'll read, so like Fletcher talks about all the time, and if he says that he really likes someone's book and it made him feel like a brand new author, and I know how so many people that love his books, I bought 2 of them and they're on my list coming up. I'm like, okay, I'm like, it's okay for me to feel that way, because here's somebody that, you know, my friend the other day was read Beyond Redemption and was just like absolutely, you know, mind blown. So I was like, all right, we're okay to feel this way if, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
people that, you know, I'm anxious to talk to him about feeling that way as well here in a little bit, because I felt like that the other day after talking to Mark and uh, reading the first couple pages of his book. I was just like,
Oh
oh, and then he goes, can I read it? I don't like the first, like the prologue or the first couple pages of yours. I was like, yeah, after I fix it for about a week. Like,
not today. Let me
yeah, exactly. I was like, yeah, give me a minute. Like, I felt like I, you know, got ready for prom and then came down and my date looked way nicer than me. So I had to like go back and like change or something again.
reevaluate your outfit.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with today, but I'm getting great answers and topics from people. I'm gonna try and keep it going with Michael after this. I feel like we talked about so much already, and like that's why I always use the questions as a guide, because like Mark and I had so much good stuff that wasn't even from the questions. But I feel like you and I have already had a good point that, you know, for just like trying to just do your best. Like that's all any writer's trying to do, right? And I feel like at any point people have imposter syndrome or whatever, don't think this is good, but really it comes down to the readers and what they think. And like I said, I had some friends that have read your book recently and, you know, really enjoyed it. And I was glad to see that you've, had some other successes this week too, right? I don't know if you could share them, but
Yeah, well, I mean, I just I can share the one that I tweeted about.
yeah, that's fine. I just feel like you've had a good week, and I just want
I
to talk
had
about that.
like a fantastic week,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
It's been like a very big roller coaster since the book came out, which
yeah,
like I've heard like your debut month described as like a month-long panic attack, and I feel
yeah,
like that's quite accurate because
yeah.
it's very like but yeah, this week was great. I learned that my UK edition, this
They look
beautiful
so
yellow
good back
one
there, by
over
the way.
here, oh, isn't it so beautiful?
Yeah,
That yellow
it's a great, great,
spine.
great looking cover. I love the yellow spine.
Oh, right. It's like, imagine that on a shelf. Ooh.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I learned from my UK team that Among Thieves was the 11th best-selling hardback fiction in
What?
the
Oh, that's
UK
so
last week.
awesome. See, I
So
I was gonna do research after we're talking about publication, but I said I want to wait and be surprised with our viewers. So that is awesome. Congrats. That is so cool.
thanks. Yeah, part of me is still convinced, speaking of imposter syndrome, that like someone's gonna be like, oh, never mind, it was a mistake. Just kidding. Like, sorry.
I've seen so many people. Like I literally saw 10 different people tag your book this week actually. And unfortunately I was just so slammed. But I did want to tell you, I was gonna tag you and I saw a couple of really good reviews and stuff. I did share them on Twitter, but you might have missed it. The algorithm's been kind of off with mine lately for
Yeah.
some reason. But yeah, I saw 10 different people from Wednesday to Friday early morning that had been sharing your book and making the rounds. So just want to let you know that it's definitely out there and it's making the rounds. So
Yay. Yes. Well, I'll have to, after this, go find your Twitter feed directly and creep on it and find
yeah,
those
yeah.
retweets.
I know I had at least like 4 of them. So
Nice.
I know I'm probably pretty active. It's either on my actual author account or for the podcast itself. But I was like, oh, Mallory's coming this week. Like that's really cool. So yeah, it was really neat, just to see that. So I actually was trying to get to the bookstore earlier because my wife got me a gift card. Anytime I can buy, somebody that I know and support my local independent bookstore, it's like a 2-for. So
Oh, yeah.
of course they open an hour later today because of like the pandemic or whatever. And I was like, no. So I'm trying to go right after talking with Mike because I got you and a couple other people. And I was like, this is awesome. It's like I
Right?
get to do all my favorite things in a day. So that is
Yeah. What
really
a
cool.
fun
Number
day.
11. That is awesome. Well, I would also buy myself a bottle of champagne and enjoy it this week if I was anywhere near top 20 for any list whatsoever. So
Right?
that is
That's what I was
amazing.
like, and I found that news out literally at 6 o'clock in the morning because it
Oh
came
man.
as an email from my UK team. And I just like happened to, I was getting up for work and I like looked at my phone and I was like, now I'm wide awake.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so awesome.
Wide awake forever.
Yeah. Well, I hope you keep climbing. And we'd love to see you at number 1 and be the first ones to talk to you after that. So that would be
That
really,
would be
really
super
cool.
cool.
That's awesome. All right, I got sidetracked because I know you from Twitter and stuff, and I like to get those kind of things in on the podcast. So how did you start writing in fantasy exactly?
Good question. So,
Or maybe even what attracted you to writing fantasy?
yeah. Well, I've been a fantasy nerd forever. As long as I can remember. So, I got my like gateway into fantasy with the Redwall books by Brian Jacques
Oh
when I was in
yeah,
elementary school.
those are excellent.
I was very obsessed with those books. And so I read those and then like the Chronicles of Crestomancy by Diana Wynne Jones. I was really into those as well. And at a pretty young age, like a little older than that, maybe like late elementary school, I started my obsession with Tolkien and Lord of the Rings.
Oh
So
man.
yeah,
The Hobbit's definitely my favorite book.
yeah, I say I love The Hobbit. The books of the actual Lord of the Rings I didn't read until a little later because
Yeah.
they're a little more dense.
Oh yeah,
like
that first
a
one,
9-year-old.
Fellowship. Yeah, that Fellowship. Oh
Yeah,
man, I feel
they're
like more
a
accomplished
lot.
reading the Fellowship than any of Steven Erickson's like Malazan Book of the Fallen, and it was very wordy. I love the ideas and stuff in it, but yeah, it was
Yeah,
very
well,
difficult.
it was written a long time ago,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's a bit older now. But I loved the movies from like I don't know 4th grade on.
Oh, they're great.
So yeah, so that's been like an obsession of mine for a really long time. I genuinely, I'm not sure if I've ever written anything of substance that is not in the fantasy genre.
Oh, okay, cool.
So like maybe a couple short stories, or
Yeah.
I've obviously like I've written some poetry and stuff that's not, but not like anything I actually like tried to pursue publication with.
Yeah.
That wasn't fantasy. And I think the reason why I gravitate toward it is it's just so fun to make up my own world.
Oh yeah.
Like major props to the folks that do write contemporary. I cannot imagine, and maybe, who knows, maybe someday I'll try my hand at contemporary. I don't see it right now, but I can't imagine working within the confines of like stuff that already exists.
No, I definitely get that. Yeah.
It's just so much fun to be able to be like, I'm going to create kingdoms and like their political relationships, and I'm going to make a religion, and like I just have so much fun with that. Like that's the most fun part, arguably, of the process for me, that I think giving it up would just, I don't know, take a lot of the joy out of writing in general for me. So.
Oh, it's funny that you say that, because Scott and I were talking, because I didn't realize that I might actually have it on my shelf at my parents' house. Because I have a bunch of Conan books and stuff, and I didn't realize that he had written a novella actually in Robert E. Howard's Conan world. I knew he had written short stories for Savage Swords and things, and that's one of the questions that I will be asking him is, how does it feel? Because I've always wanted to write a Forgotten Realms book, and then of course now they don't do them, and unless you're Bob or Ed, and and I would love to see. We talked with some different authors the other day, and Mark and I talked about this because Mark was like, I would love to write a Forgotten Realms book, and I was like, well, maybe one of these days, if we all get famous, or whatever, get enough readers, we can pool together and open it back up or whatever.
Right, revitalize it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I love those books, and I got like 350 of them. That's what I'm trying to do with mine, is like something like that. But I wanted to ask Scott next episode and say, like, what is it like writing somebody's world where it's already been written? And
Yes.
I always really worry about that. Like, I want to do it for some different things like Warhammer and stuff, but it's like, I'm like you. I really enjoy the world building, and I wonder about that, and I think it'd be a lot harder than just coming up with new stuff.
No, I totally agree. Well, I know a lot of writers and authors cut their teeth writing fan fiction.
Oh yeah.
And like I always feel like I'm like, I have to like hide the fact that I never wrote fan fiction. I have literally never in my life written fan fiction. And it's not because I like, fan fiction. Like I'm not against it or anything. I just like, again, props to the people that are writing fan fiction. That feels so much harder to me.
Oh, it is.
To like work within the confines of a world that someone else has already created. It kind of feels like, you mentioned that you do some computer code. I used to, my old day job, I used to do some coding.
Okay.
It's like coming in and trying to edit someone else's code. I feel like, right?
You don't know where you don't know where to start.
Yeah, like I know, what I was trying to do when I wrote it. Whereas if it's someone else's code, I have to first come in, figure out what the heck it's doing, and try to get in their head what they were thinking when they wrote it.
Yeah, it is. It's its own language. Yeah.
Yes. And I think to me, it feels the same to try to write within an existing like world. I don't know.
That's a really good way to put it.
Tricky.
No, I think that's a really good way to put it. Like, I guess I shouldn't say I didn't try to write fan fiction. I wasn't really trying, but the Forgotten Realms they used to have were like, if you submitted a book and they liked it, they would buy it from you and give you a chance, And I did attempt to do that when I was 14. That's where my world started and it's probably why I like still those types of books. That's what I like to read and write. And I tried it, but it was just like, there was so much in the Forgotten Realms that I like how you put it with the coding. It was its own language. And, I felt like I would have finished something if I wasn't trying, like if I had just tried to write my own book, I would have been able to finish, I think, earlier. But trying to write in someone else's, it took me a long time to realize, probably like 10 years when I was writing different, like, I guess fan fiction, I guess what you would label it as, Forgotten Realms book. It just didn't work. And I like how you said that too, like earlier, like, I think it's because it was someone else's language and it wasn't my own. I think it's a lot easier that way.
I think about it too with, like when there's such a huge body of work out there already in the franchise, like everyone that's writing Star Wars novels right now.
Yeah.
To write something and not accidentally step on the toes of canon somewhere else would be so difficult. It would be really, really difficult. So all of that is just like whole new challenges.
Oh yeah. I definitely, like we talked about earlier, I definitely think I'd have to, I thought about Star Wars too, because that's the sci-fi that I first started reading. And I think that was my leap into the Forgotten Realms. And the Forgotten Realms was my leap into, I would say, like contemporary fantasy. And I thought about that the other day. I was just like, I don't even know where you would start with, like, where I want to know. I'm gonna try and talk to one author actually that I know, where she actually just wrote one of the new I think it's the High Republic series, like
Oh,
book
okay.
one or whatever. And I want to ask her and be like, where did you start? Like, you just
Right.
like how
Exactly.
like in
Exactly. You
this
must have
entire
like an
galaxy.
intense amount of research.
Yeah,
It must be nuts, but
yeah. Like, is there some
hey.
sort of, like, we were wondering, like with Forgotten Realms too, like, because my buddy and I talked about this. He goes, well, would you consider starting your own, like, Wizards of the Coast or TSR? And I said, well, if mine became popular enough indie, I would. And then, like yourself or somebody, if they wanted to come and write, I said, yeah. And he said, now let's just think about this. He's like, because we talked about, like, I've been starting to form my own dictionary for my world and stuff just as I go. And there's already too much compared to what I already started, and, having to fix and this and that. So I said, yeah, I definitely need to do that. And he said, well, it's probably a better idea just to think ahead, that if you were going to do this, you'd already have that done. So that way, like a Star Wars, or even like, Tolkien, like, people could come in very easily and write in your world. And I thought, oh man, he's like, yeah, just doing that one dictionary helps not just you, but
Yeah.
anybody. And I was like, that's actually a really good business plan, for like the future. And I don't know, I started thinking about that, and I was like, I wonder if Star Wars, or these companies like Dragonlance, like, I wonder if Dragonlance or Forgotten Realms, if they ever did that, because it's just so, like, here, read some of this before you start writing for us. Like, I just feel like
Right.
there's so much there. It's like,
So much value.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I
Well, and
don't even know
even
where you'd
like
start.
creating like a world dictionary, or like I create a big giant OneNote document every single time I start a new
Oh,
project,
okay, that's good to
where
know.
I have, yeah, it's great. It's like I have different subfolders for, every character, and I interview them, and then like I have inspiration images for them and
Oh,
like a
that's
bio
cool.
card. And then also all the different elements of my world. I have a folder for any research that I've done with the tidbits that I think will be helpful. And it's helpful not just like if someone else is going to come and write in the space, but like it's helpful for you, because
Oh
I
yeah.
can't tell you how many times I've come back to a project after a couple months and been like,
Oh,
uh
no, I
what
definitely
was the
understand
name
that.
of that one city again, or like what
Yeah.
color eyes did I give this one character? And then instead of having to like trope through your manuscript and try to find it, you can just flip to that one page of your story bible and be like, ah, yes, the eyes were green, let's keep going.
Yeah,
So
because you
yeah,
can't change it, because you'll have that one fan for
yes,
your
that will
second book, and they'll be
notice.
like, hey, like, why did this
What is
happen?
it?
Yeah. It was like Dirk
Yeah.
was saying, he was like, yeah, somebody mentioned that in one of his books, and he was just like, gosh darn it. So, and he was like, what do I do? Like, go back and, republish. So he's like, I fixed it on Amazon, but I think it was him that was talking about it on the Wizards, Words and Words. He's like, but it's kind of hard to fix it on the print books, like,
Yeah,
it's just
they're
like,
already printed.
yeah, yeah, they're already printed. So I'm gonna stop real quick here, because you
Yeah.
actually said something that I think was really, really good. Uh, what's up, guys? Uh, when you said you interview your characters, so what exactly, like, take me through that process just real fast, because I think we stumbled on a gem here, because I think a lot of people maybe haven't considered doing that. So
Yeah.
what exactly is that process like for you?
So it's honestly one of the lengthiest parts of my entire like outlining world building process. But it saves me so much time and headache when I get into actually drafting. So what I do is I just have all my characters, and then I have a list of 20, 30 questions that I'll ask them. And, some of them are really easy questions like, where were you born or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
but a lot of them are deeper, like, you know, what in your opinion is the worst way to die? It's kind of morbid, but like, you got to kind of get at the meat. And then the trick is to not only just answer those questions, but answer them in the character's voice. So like if you ask the character, like, what's your full name? If the character would lie, don't put the character's full name there, have them
Oh, okay.
lie. It just kind of lets me nail down what what makes them tick, get their MO sorted out. And then also, especially if they're going to be a point of view character, it really helps me get their voice so that when I actually get into the drafting, I feel like I know them already. Like, I feel like we're already buddies.
Yeah.
And I can kind of sink into their shoes a little bit easier. I started doing that probably around the third book that I wrote. And the first time I did it, I was like, oh, holy crap, I'm never going back to not doing this. Like, it makes it so much easier. You can, if you just Google like character interview questions too, there's a ton of awesome bloggers that have just like put lists of like 100 questions. And I would recommend, because what I do, I just like Google that and then like cherry pick, a couple questions from a bunch of different blogs. So I have different questions every time. I would totally recommend, especially like if, anyone out there is listening and feel like you're just like, ooh, I kind of know what this character's up to, but I just like can't quite wrap my hand around what their whole heart of them is. I think that's one of the easiest ways to really get at the meat of your characters.
And see, so this is the kind of question that I started the podcast for, just in general for myself, because like Brandon Sanderson does something similar. But you want to be on camera, buddy?
Oh my gosh, dog appearance.
Woke over his neck. So Brandon Sanderson talked about something similarly, but I'm glad you stated that for us exactly, because I've been trying to do something similar, but I did it the way that Brandon said to do it. He writes like a page to 5 pages describing the character and those different things. I tried that. I don't know the answers, so I can't finish it. And then that hurts me for what the whole tool and process is supposed to be. So I like how you said actually interviewing, because I think for me that's a better practice and will work a lot better that way, because then it will help me to discover specifically those different things about the character and answer those questions myself, versus just writing a 2 to 3 page description or this. Like, I know the character, I want to know those deeper level questions. So I think that's
stuff
a lot more helpful.
Never show up in the manuscript. Sometimes I ask
but that
my
you
characters,
need to know.
Sometimes I ask them stuff that like doesn't even exist in their world. Like, I'll ask them like what their Starbucks order is. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm just trying to like
figure out their response,
figure out who this person is, and make them like a fully fleshed out person. But I think it's a really good point that you bring up, that Brandon Sanderson has such a different process, because I think that touches on like the most important piece of like, I don't know, writing advice that I always give, is that like, take all writing advice, even what I'm saying right now, with like a huge pinch of salt, because every writer has such a different process. And like, as long as at the end you have a book that you're proud of, it's not wrong. Like, whatever process works for you. So like when I was first getting started, like my first book, I was like, my English teacher said I'm a good writer, I'm just gonna write it, and like LOL. Turns out writing a book is quite a bit different from writing.
It's a lot different.
Like, who knew? Everybody knew except for me, apparently. But when I like started actually going like, hey, this, I don't know how to do this. I read every writing blog that I could get my hands on, just to try to see the processes that different people were using. And I tried a bunch of them, and some of them were colossal failures for me. Like, you'll hear a lot of people talk about plotting versus pantsing. So I've discovered that I'm a plotter for sure. I tried pantsing because I didn't know yet, and I ended up with about 40,000 words that went nowhere.
Oh, been there.
Yeah. And it's like, I just realized, okay, tried it, cross it off the list. Pantsing is not a method that works for me. And that's okay. I feel like writing is so much trial and error, and maybe it's just, me, I know I'm a perfectionist, but I was so hard on myself in the beginning, because I was like, felt like I should be able to just churn out a book. And like, it's like anything else. Like we were talking earlier, you got to put your reps in. Like, you got to try to write a book to learn how, and you're going to probably get it wrong a few times. And that's okay.
Well, it's like, I was talking to Mark. I said, here's the thing. I said, I screwed up this book so much because 3 chapters randomly are different points of view that I tried. I said, I came up with so much better ideas at the end. I said, now I just feel like it's literally a garbage heap, and there's a lot there, but it just feel like it's going to take a lot to sort out. I said, is it going to be a great story one day? Yes. I said, I just don't know if that's now. And so he's trying to help me figure out, like, should I just, and Fletcher and then we're talking about it too, I think in season 1, right before the pandemic or right at the start of the pandemic, where a lot of writers, and I remember Mike talking about it specifically, he's like, I'll write a book. He's written multiple books and just left them, or
Yeah.
maybe come back later, like you said, take parts. And I'm just wondering if I should, because he said, like, one of them said, like, you shouldn't publish your first book. And Brandon talks about that too. And I'm thinking maybe I should just, I'm plotting out this Griffin Riders series that I really like. And I finally was able to fix the characters. And now I have the characters. So I'm just trying to fix the story now,
Yeah.
which was what Scott and I just talked about. And I feel like it's okay to come back to this one later. And I have a,
Yes.
like, I have a career, like I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, like I like have other stuff that we do, Airbnb and stuff. Like I don't need to sell books, you know, like I just want to write books and then have other people read them. And I think it's okay to do that. And Scott and I were just talking about that. But yeah, it's like, I think sometimes it's kind of hard to determine the writing process, like you're saying. And I've had to figure out, you know, like I was talking to Mark or someone else the other day and on Twitter, and they likened writing processes for different people, like trying on different clothes, you know, and like Adidas is one of the only like ones like for shoes that I can fit because they have wide feet but not, you know, long feet. And now they're making shoes for people like me, so it's a lot easier to find sizes. But like Nikes, I can't usually wear, you know, it's my size, but it's not
Right. But
really,
it
it doesn't
doesn't,
fit, you
it's not
know.
comfy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be a size that fits all, but it doesn't. And we were talking about how the writing process is, like you were just mentioning that, you know, like something might, like Jed Hearn actually does the Excel spreadsheet for tracking writing. Turns out I'm a really big goal person. That's why lately my writing's tapered, because I let my Excel spreadsheet taper. So now I have
Oh
to go
yeah.
back and fix that in order to see my goals, to
Back
go
on
back. And
track.
yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, I like how you said that though. Like, yeah, it's just, I think too many people try to fit on the wrong writing
Yes.
process, and I did that for far too long. So yeah, but I
Yeah.
like how you
Well,
mentioned different blogs though.
yes.
So if there's any in particular that you thought, you know, really worked for you, I would love just to see them and kind of share them with people, because you never, like you said, you never know, they could be, you know,
Yeah, it
ones
could be
that
helpful.
fit.
I'll send
Yeah,
over a
or
few
if
of
you
my,
ever find any, just send them to me, because I
yeah.
love writing blogs. And I'm glad you said that, because I haven't gone back to them recently, and maybe that's what I need to do, you know. And I think
Yeah.
some of our listeners are the same ways, and I think that's just
It's a
you know, a
free
great tool.
resource. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like
it's
you
such
don't
a
have
great
to,
point.
as long as you have, you know, a connection to the internet, and you know, you could get that at a public library. If you don't have
Yeah,
internet
yeah,
at home, you know, you can
and that's
read
great
all of
advice.
this great information for free. But yeah, going back a little bit to what you were saying about, you know, not sure if you wanted to, you know, push that first book out or wait. I it reminds me of it, you know, obviously this is different because, like, you know, you're a grown adult, but I was doing
Sometimes.
yeah, we try to be
Yeah,
grown up.
yeah,
It's difficult.
yeah.
But I was doing a speaking engagement at a school a little while ago, and you
Oh,
know, when,
that's cool.
especially, yeah, it was super fun. But when I'm talking to like younger writers, I always like to caution, especially younger writers, but any writer, once you have your first book out there, your name is on it and it's out there. You can't take it back.
Yeah,
So, you know, it doesn't, you know, mean that you should just be like really scared and gun shy and don't post anything, but you know, it doesn't hurt to be, you know, to take
it
a
sets
minute.
your brand though. It sets your
Yeah,
brand.
exactly. So like that's why I'm like, I'm so thrilled that that first, you know, young adult fantasy that I tried to sell, I'm thrilled now that it didn't sell, because, you know, it wasn't the best I can do. And I know that now. I didn't know it at the time because it was the best I could do at the time. I guess maybe someday I'll regret Among Thieves, but I don't think I will. I love my
I don't
little
think
team of
so.
rogues.
Yeah, I
But you
don't
know,
think so.
I feel like this is a much better you know, this is a much better like first step into the publishing world for me. So yeah, that's always like my word of caution. Like, you know, there's no age limit on publishing. Like nobody
Yeah,
needs to
yeah.
jump the gun, you know? So
No, yeah. And that's why I say to Mark, you know, I was talking to him, I said, I want a rapid release anyway, because like I would like to, you know, like I've looked at sales and marketing, and it seems that, you know, people that do 7 for indie publishing do a lot
Yeah.
better, like
I've
35 to
heard that number
38%.
is the magic number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's and like really they say 9. Like Lindsay Broker, like their oh my gosh, I'm sorry, Lindsay. I'm blanking on this name because they changed their podcast.
Oh, okay.
It had a different name. And Mark and I were just talking about it. I just got him onto it on Friday actually. But yeah, like it's like it was like the 100K, like where people wanted to get to 100K for sales and things like that. And it was just so interesting though, where they were just discussing that. You coming back on camera, bud? They were just talking about that. So it's just funny that you mentioned that because they were just talking about that on it was either their last episode or 2 episodes ago, just kind of about the same thing, like it sets your brand and, like rapid releasing, especially with rapid releasing, but just in general, like that first book sets your brand. And they
Yeah.
also said, like, you probably shouldn't publish your first book that you wrote, go and write another one, come back to that one later if you want. So it's interesting. I feel like, a lot of people say that. So I've been debating that because I'm like we were talking earlier, like I just don't think I have the writing experience for it, and I'm thinking of just writing a second book. I would like to fix it though at some
Yeah. Well,
point.
you can
So
always come back.
yeah,
That's a
yeah,
great thing. Until it's published, you can edit it as many times as you
yeah,
want.
exactly.
No limit on that either. Yeah.
Exactly.
You can do 60 drafts if you want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It doesn't.
Well, and Brandon talked
matter.
about that like
Yeah.
on his online lectures before the pandemic, when they were great, and I'd highly recommend them for any of our listeners. And I'll actually be doing a podcast about them. I'm going to go back through, listen, and pull out great advice that he had. But it's kind of hard because it's like simplifying a definition that's already simplified, and his stuff was just so great for his class. But he talked about like again like how he wrote like 11 to 13 books, but he never went back and edited any of them. And he said that was the thing that was keeping him from selling. So that's what we were cautioning, listeners to the other day too, is that, if you are going to set that first book aside, that's fine. But just know that you are going to have to do that process of editing to get that experience. And I kind of feel like I'm avoiding that. And I feel like it's what I need the most.
Editing is the fun part of the process. Editing is where you get to take all of the sand that you've gathered in your first draft and make your castle. Like,
oh, that's a really good way to put it. We got a lot of good quotes from you today. So
I'm full of metaphors today. But like this book right here, this is probably the, I don't know, 25th, 26th draft of Among Thieves.
Oh, wow.
So, the first draft of Among Thieves was not good. It was not good. It was bad and riddled with plot holes and cardboard characters. And, and then I had to fix it.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay to have a bad first draft. Honestly, it's like normal to have a bad first draft.
I think if you don't, then you're lying to yourself.
Yeah. Well, if you don't have a bad first draft and it's genuinely not a bad first draft,
did you write a book then?
Lying to yourself, then you need to share whatever magical potion you have.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. I want it too. If anybody discovers it after listening,
like, I'll put an order in. Thanks.
Yeah. We'll take 10, please,
for the
and
first
we'll tell our
draft
friends.
Potion. Yeah.
God, that just makes it sound so much easier.
Wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah, it sounds so much more preferable than like I print. So I'm a teacher, right? So I printed my first draft, and Mark and I were talking about it. He goes, and my other friend said the same thing, and he's like, you should really just go through, print it, and just correct it like a teacher. And I'm like, that's a great advice. He's like, you're used to it, you've been trained to do it, and he's like, you'll probably get more out of it than just rereading it that way on the computer. And
it helps because it's in a different format. I always, every single draft I do, I'm sorry, trees. I promise I recycle them after, but I always do one hard copy edit.
Okay. See, that's good to know. I think listeners would really, that's good advice, I think.
Yeah. It's just like,
that makes you feel better.
It takes you away from the computer. It takes you out of that like perfection element because I'm using handwriting, which my handwriting is terrible. So it like feels like freer. I can be messy and, cross stuff out, but it didn't actually delete it because the file's still in the computer. I can just cross it out. You know what I mean? It's a lot less pressure. I don't know. It's nice. So I would recommend that.
Yeah. And I got like Scrivener to do that, but I have to learn Scrivener. No offense, Scrivener, but I have to learn that to do it. And it's like, it's taking forever. And I'm like, well, why don't I just do it this way? I'm like, I don't have to learn the program till later. And it's just like, I just feel like it'll work a lot better for me.
Then you can buy fun pens that are
that
colorful.
Too. Yeah, that too. Well, we're running out of time, but we got so much good stuff. If you don't mind coming back, Mallory, that'd be terrific. We could do a second episode before airing this one. Then we could just do you back to back. That's what I've been doing with Scott and Mark, actually. We had so much going on today. I didn't want to detract us, and I feel like I got a lot out of today, and I know other people will as well. So listeners, we're going to stop here, and we'll invite Mallory back for her episode 2. And what we'll do is we'll just actually have them back-to-back weeks, just like I said, like Mark and Scott's. So thank you so much, Mallory, for coming. I'll just do our sign off real quick. Is there anything you want to promote? Obviously, Among the Thieves.
I don't
Real
know.
quick before we end.
Something. No, yeah,
And to the people
right?
watching
I don't
the
know
YouTube.
what I'm possibly promoting. Possibly Among Thieves.
They look so good back there.
They're so beautiful. Chris
They're
McGrath
really
did the
nice.
cover art, and he's a wizard.
Oh, I love it.
But yeah, no, I just would say, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me on. I
Oh, of
will
course,
be very
anytime.
happy to come back for another,
Perfect. I'm really excited.
Yeah, but Among Thieves, and then if anyone wants to find me anywhere on the internet, I'm just at MJ Kuhn Books, all one word. I'm on all the social medias because I'm a millennial, and that's how we roll.
Actually, any other links you want to send me, I'll put them in the description. I do have your website, so I will be putting that in description. Anything you want to send me at all, just give to me, and we'll put right there in that description for the YouTube channel, and we'll direct people for the Spotify there, and we'll have a couple other things like on my Twitter and the Facebook page and stuff like that. So.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So for any of you listening out there, thank you again for coming to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. You can find our videos on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. The audio will be on Spotify, I promise, by the time you listen to this one, well before that. Feel free to reach us at scholarsofuma, that's UMA @gmail.com. Let us know if you'd like to see any other authors or writers on our podcast, any questions you have for future guests. Feel free to send us any videos and pictures that are fantasy and sci-fi related. Mallory, again, thank you so much for coming, and I'll send you a couple of possible calendar dates. That way we can lock down your second episode, and we'll get you all squared away.
Sounds good. Thanks so
Perfect.
much.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Mallory, have a good rest of the day, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.